being able to stop and think about today and think about now. It's a conscious practice that over time we could build into a more of a second nature practice.
Hello and welcome to the And Both podcast. Here we are going to hear from moms and those in motherhood that are doing the thing that works for them. They are honoring themselves alongside the all-encompassing role and level of expectation that is modern motherhood. And we are going to hear from as many different people as possible in their own experience. So you can find people to relate to. You can hear stories that will make you laugh, make you cry, all of the above, and that we will come together as a community to support one another in a way that is holistic and honoring of the woman and the mother as a whole. All right. Hello and welcome back to the And Both podcast. I am here today with Christina Bogatsky. I hope I said that right.
Perfect.
Yes. Okay. Awesome. I have one of those like super common last names that people are still like, hey, how do you spell that? And I'm like, I cannot. So I do not want to ever butcher someone's name because I've had the name Ashley butchered 27 different ways. So it's like,
that's impressive. I have to say that's really impressive.
It is. So welcome. I am so excited that you're here, and I would love for you to start off and just talk a little bit about yourself, what you do. You have a business, you have children, all of that, and then we'll get into the and both part of it after.
The good stuff. Ashley, thank you so much for hosting me. This is exciting. I've been looking forward to this, and I want to say I'm so impressed with what you've built, and just in the research that I've done, I've listened to your episodes so far. Between what you're doing with Dovetail and creating this forum to bring forth the conversations that you have so far and the many that you will is so important. So I just got chills saying that because
thank you.
It's time. And so
yeah,
it's truly an honor to be here, and it's very timely. I've listened to your past couple of conversations, and there was so much nodding, and there's just so much that, we can kind of circle back to. But in the way of intro, so I'm Christina Bogatsky. I live in the San Francisco Bay Area. I'm originally from San Francisco. I live just outside of the city now with my 2 children and my partner. My kids are 3. Oh, sorry. I'm used to say 3 and 5. My older one is Kira is 5 years old. My daughter's 5, and my younger one, Benji, just turned 4. So we've gotten into the school groove, and that has been just such, a myriad of transformations and transitions, but it's been really nice. Yeah. And my background, I'm 42. I worked in corporate settings for most of my career for almost 2 decades prior to starting a family. My background is primarily in tech and digital media with a bit of finance. So I sort of bookended my corporate experience with, I started in finance. I still work very part-time in venture capital, but I run my coaching practice, which is Totally Fine Coaching. And I know we're going to get into this because it's really my journey into and through motherhood that brought me to this kind of work. Because wow, the transformation and the personal transition that took place when I started my family was, I think for many of us, just unforeseen, even though we come into parenthood and we come into our family structures in very many different ways. And those of us who give birth have those 9 months to sort of prepare, whatever that looks like. I did not see it coming, and so the personal shift and call it identity shock, that I faced and that I'm very much still in, really inspired me to do the kind of work now. And so I think to just provide just at a very high level, I mostly work with women. My work is not isolated to just women, but anyone going through a transition who is experiencing stuckness or overwhelm. My goal is to help people get through that period, but in a way that allows them to really embrace today, the moment. Because what I found myself when I became a mom, I looked back. I did a ton of reflection on the kind of work that I did, and I'm happy to talk about just what, because I pivoted pretty drastically, and I thought about what it is that gives me fulfillment. But anyway, I realized that there's just so magic in the journey. And I spent so much of my time historically thinking about the end goal and
Yeah.
neglecting and forgetting about that beautiful process, which is really where I believe the magic is. So that's what I do today. I'm a life coach, and I have a podcast where I really want to surface the conversations of becoming or unbecoming, and just the transformation and the inspiration that people find and how they get themselves to where they want to be. And so that's sort of my goal, in the conversations that I share through my Totally Fine Navigating Life with Love podcast.
That's awesome. I love that. I love the I really resonate with the idea that I think so much of, especially when you're in the thick of it, like the early part of motherhood is like, I just have to get to the next thing, right? Because like
Yeah,
that becomes your like survival pattern is like,
yeah,
some days it's like, I have to get to lunch, I have to get to dinner, I have to get to bedtime. And like you miss, you end up just sort of fast forwarding so much of the present in just to try and make it to the next thing for the purpose of making it to the next thing and the next thing, and you get stuck in these, I don't know, it's like this ungreased cog of like we have to like and move on and move on and move on. And I like the idea of like not shying away from what you have going on, and not
yeah,
not trying to find a faster way through it, but a way to like, all right, we're here. This is where we are now. As we work our way through, don't forget to, it's that stop and smell the roses
yes,
without it being obnoxious. I can't think of the word right now because we're talking about this, but it's like a diminutive thing where you just say like, don't worry, sweetie, tomorrow will be better. Like we're not saying that. You're saying like
right.
right now is hard and it's hard, but that doesn't mean that there isn't good parts of it.
I couldn't agree more. And I think the flip side of that, where I've really had to train myself because I've always been a goal setter and goal reacher. And when I stopped working for about 18 months, just
Mhm.
before my son was born, my younger one. And once I created space and I had time away from my old life, everything shifted within me. And I'm very much still in that transition. Perhaps it'll never end. Hopefully it's a lifelong evolution, but I had to check myself because I realized my children punctuate time so dramatically, right? I mean, all of
Yeah.
this, it's like, I know your children are between 3 and 10 years old. Like, you have four. Oh my gosh, I bowed down. And my two have me on my knees. But they punctuate time so poignantly. And as someone who's always been on the go and has always been focused on the end state, I very consciously have been in this practice of, I mean, hugging and smelling my son, or like right now, I have a really annoying commute home from pickup, and it's like
Mhm.
we're sitting in traffic, and it's just really annoying. That's changing soon because we're moving, but I'm thinking, how can I just like relish the beauty around me? We live in Marin County. We live in a beautiful place. How can
Yeah.
I make this otherwise repetitive and annoying drive home magical every day? And so it is definitely a practice. It is hard, but it's helped me uh to stop and just be present, because that's always been a struggle for me. It's meditation historically had been a struggle, and just like sitting in a yoga pose had been a struggle. And a lot, I've changed a lot over the
Yeah.
past 5 years because of my journey into motherhood. But that's been a major part of my personal journey and my personal evolution, just being able to like enjoy it. Oh, I was going to say desperation. So I wrote a Medium article about this where I had, a kid on my tit and a kid, was still in diapers. And this was in the
Yeah.
pandemic. This is the beginning of 2020, right after my son was born. And I was like, I felt physically terrible. I was
Mhm.
exhausted. I was sleep deprived. I was not in my body. I was in my body, but not liking I was just not in my best place. And I wrote about my journey into my fitness journey because, um, I wanted to feel better. And so because I was so desperate when it came to what I had available to give, I was
Yeah.
able to really focus. And so I would do like five, like a 5 minute workout or a 15-minute workout. And
Hmm.
it was one of the greatest lessons for me in just stripping yourself of everything else and just focusing on something for like 5 or 15 minutes
Yeah.
and building up these habits that end up reaping awesome results.
Hmm.
And desperation sounds really dark and doomed, but it taught me that when I cut out the BS and just gave myself what I needed in that moment, whether it's like the workout or like the hugging and the smelling of my son and feeling that oxytocin rush, it's so worth it. It's so worth it. And
Yeah.
like I also over the summer reread Mark Manson's The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Bleep, and
Yep.
he says like you solve this problem, there's another one waiting.
Hmm.
I spent most of my younger adulthood solving issues to not have issues, but then that's just not life. That is literally just that doesn't happen. There are peaks and there are valleys, but once you address whatever's in front of you, there's going to be another one. And so the quality of he talks about how the quality of our problems is what defines the quality of our life, right? It's
Yeah.
and so anyway, I kind of rambled there, but I couldn't agree more. It's like just being able to stop and think about today and think about now.
For
It's a
sure.
conscious practice that over time we could build into a more of a second nature practice.
Yeah, and I think too, like, there's so much of it that comes down to the pandemic, like in terms of, it kind of, I feel like pre-pandemic, we're all going along as it was because there was no like giant wake up call. There was no like slamming of doors, closing of the country, like all of this stuff that happened. But what I think when I think about the pandemic, I think that like this at some point we were going to get to where we were. And
Yep.
this created this, I mean, literal hard stop on all of that. But there's so many people that I spoke to coming out of it that were like in that similar vein of like I was going and going for the purpose of going and going, and then when I couldn't go and go, I realized that my the inertia that I had was being driven by the things I was carrying, and I didn't even want to carry these things. And that I was running past all of the things that I needed to do in order to take care of myself and all of this. It's like I saw a thing the other day online. It was talking about like how, kids in the 80s, they didn't drink out of these like water bottles and we didn't blah blah blah. And and like on face value, I'm like, that's so true. Like I remember water fountains and all this
Yeah.
stuff. But then I go to pack my kids' lunch in the morning and I look at the counter and there's my kids' water bottles are there and mine's next to it. And I pack my kids' water when we leave the house and I leave mine on the counter. And I'm like, why would I do that for them if I'm not going to do that for myself? So like why do I in a pandemic make sure that my kids are running around in the backyard and I'm doing all of these things that like there's no time crunch because we're not going anywhere or doing
Yeah.
anything. I need to stop and go run around in the yard and like do all of these things that do fill that part up so that I can feel better, so that I do get the fresh air. It's that idea of like taking care of ourselves in ways that we are able to with what we have available for time and resources in a way that mirrors what we would do for somebody else. Like you wouldn't treat somebody else the way that you treat yourself sometimes. I think
Oh
like
yeah.
we just sort of like kick it down the road for a little while. One of the guests that I had on already, Dr. Storch, she works with people that have injuries because they ignored injuries. It's just that like I'm not there yet, so let's just carry on, carry on, carry on, and then eventually it's going to catch up to you. Everything catches up to you. So
Oh yeah.
I love the idea of starting small because I think too the other problem in the messaging is that unless you've got a personal trainer and 40 hours of childcare and all of this stuff like you're just supposed to feel bad because you're like in the grind of it
Yep.
versus finding ways to put these pockets of coming back to you, and these pockets of taking care of you, and these pockets of remembering that like you are a person who is doing all of the things for all of the people, and that you
Yep.
also get to be on that attendance list.
I think that's so beautiful and so potent. And in your conversation with Rachel May, you guys talked about embodying the virtues and the pursuit of your livelihood and interests that really is what teaches our children what we would otherwise preach to them. But that's not how they learn. We know that's not how they learn. I mean, science has
Right.
demonstrated, it's like we have mirror neurons where we actually, like, they are activated. And you, as an OT, like, they are activated when we observe a behavior, and when we repeat that same behavior, that is how those neural pathways are strengthened. And so
Mhm.
when I started as a parent, I I think many of us do this, but I led with my default, my how I was brought up, and what I
Mhm.
had been shown, what I knew. And then over the past 5 years, that's evolved significantly. And in that journey, I've done an immense amount of work of self-reflection and personal development, and that is a journey that I hope will never end. So you and Rachel talked about that, but also, when it comes to going outside and playing with your kids, like, the laundry can wait, the dishes can
Right.
wait. This is very hard for particularly working moms who have this insane, pun intended, laundry list of shit that we need to do. And
Mhm.
because there's always something else to do. But that's the thing, there is always something else to do. And I've had to catch myself and just think, okay, would I rather play outside with my kids and, like, play fetch with the dog and that help have the kids get involved, or, like, get ahead on laundry? Like, I'm programmed to
Mhm.
get ahead on laundry because there's so much overwhelm, but the overwhelm's never really, it's not what exists to be ready to be done. It's how we react to that and how we treat that load of responsibility. But by you choosing to go outside and engage with your kids, you're demonstrating to them not only that you're tending to yourself and that you value that quality time, but that they should do the same. And at the end of the day, those are the moments that are going to be burned into their psyche, that they're going to grow up remembering. It's those simple moments that really matter to them.
Mhm.
I saw something on, I think it was on Instagram, and it was just I mean, I'm gonna mess this up, but it's like a mother and her children or child or whatever, and they're in bed, and she heard the bubble above her saying, like, "I'm such a bad mom. Like, all we didn't do anything today. We didn't leave the house. All we did was, watch TV and, like, whatever." And the kids' bubble is, my best moments are I love cuddling with my mom in bed and just, like, spending time with her no matter what we're doing. These are, like, the best moments of my life, and that is so true. And just remembering what
Yeah.
matters just it's so critical, but it's so easy to let go of.
Yeah, and it's hard to think like cuz I have I have a 10-year-old and I have a 3-year-old, and my 3-year-old is you know upset about something, and my 10-year-old who's now like getting ready to go into middle school and things like that, she's like, I wish I could get upset about that. Like, I wish that that was the only thing that was upsetting. And I'm like, but for
Mm.
him right now, it's the same level as something that would make you feel that way. Like, it's all relative, right? Like, as you go through, I mean, when you're 3, it's like, I can't eat all my Halloween candy for breakfast. Although I've eaten Halloween candy for breakfast for the
Yep.
last 4 days. Don't tell my children.
All good.
I'm
This
like,
this is this is a safe
it's
place.
yeah, like, well, I mean, it's gotta go somewhere, right?
Oh,
And,
yeah.
so it's that, like, as you get older incrementally with the stress and the exposure to the world and the things that you have, like, these things get big. And then, I think it's also too important to model, like, the weighing one for the other, so, like, there is that idea of, like, I wanna go outside and I wanna run around with my kids and I wanna go and do all of that, the fun things, but then there's also, like, some days the taking care of myself means when we come back in from running around and doing all those things that, like, I'm not, like, tripping over the baskets of laundry that need to get done and stuff like that. And I think that
Yeah.
too, what happens is, like, we live in such a, there's so many hard boundaries around, like, what you're doing, like, when you're doing a good job as compared to, like, nothing, right? Like, when you're doing a good job or when you're not doing a good job, like, you're a good mom if you go outside and run around and play with your kids. but you're a good mom if you are doing all of these things that need to get done in the background. So it's just like, it's like trying to figure out where the balance is individually on a
Oh yeah.
day-to-day basis and in that time. Do you know what I mean? Like,
100%.
yeah, I think that's hard too, because there's so many things, like when you see stuff online and when you see stuff, you see other people and you talk with people, it's like some days it's like you're all dressed up and ready to go and everyone's out the door and things are smooth sailing and you're like, man, I got this. And some days you're like, God, I hope I'm not wearing my slippers as I'm like trying to get the kids to school on time, and how we have to like give ourselves a whole lot of like space and grace and gentle bumpers just around.
Gentle bumpers. And you talked a bit about this, but these external stimuli and expectations,
Hmm.
this might sound a little crude, but we live in a world in which we're tricked into thinking that that's what matters, and we
Hmm.
forget that it comes from within. Our ability to heal, to thrive, to be the kind of human we want to be, it comes from within. And this goes down to like, I mean, this is like a very simple example. And like some of us have deficiencies, we need to take supplements, but really we should be getting all of our nutrients from our food. Imagine a world in which we're getting our nutrients from our food. That applies to so many other things. Like because we live in a consumerist society, and like we're just drowning in media and ads. And I'm like
Hmm.
a brand's biggest enemy. Well, whatever. I like my things, but it's like I'm just gonna say you don't need all the fancy shit. But anyway, but going back to expectations and these standards, I realized a few months ago, like I don't want to be a good wife or I don't want to be a good mom. Like that, whatever that means, that's not what I want to do. I know what I want for my children. I want my children to to be kind and curious. I want them to be kind, curious, and be exposed to experiences and environments that challenge them to think
Hmm.
critically. I don't want them to take what I say for granted. I want them to question that. When it comes to my partnership, I want that. I don't want my husband to think, oh, she's a really good wife. We had
Yeah.
this conversation. I'm like, that's not, I don't want to be a good wife because I'm making dinner or I'm, keeping a clean house. But I went into these roles with that in mind. And then I realized, like, no, it is about the type of person that I want to be in those roles and what it means for me to achieve my goal for those dynamics and for those relationships. And with my kids, it's those things that I mentioned. And with my husband, I mean, I think that's the trickiest thing because you choose to be with someone, but the reality is we're constantly evolving organisms. Like I change, I'm a different woman today than he met 5+ years ago, for sure. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, so much about me has changed. He's changed. And so that is a very conscious, that is a conscious alignment that you kind of have to check in on a regular basis. And that's probably a whole separate conversation. Um, but it's like we forget, and the world wants us to forget that it is all in here. And it's very hard to do when there's all this noise. Like I recently talked about on my podcast about what I called clouding agents, and these are everything from what we ingest, like the foods, the pills, the drugs, whatever, the alcohol. Clouding agents are societal norms and expectations of the standards that you're seeing around you. Like I live in Marin, I live in one of like the wealthiest counties on the planet. It is really hard because
Yeah.
like I can ground myself, but then I'm thinking about how do I ground my children with respect to like what matters in life, and like how do I want to shepherd their thinking and their discernment about what matters in life. But a major clouding agent is in fact our internal programming that comes
Hmm.
from earlier life experiences and like how we've
What's modeled
evolved
for
to.
us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And actually you mentioned when we started talking about the pandemic period and like the value of going outside and playing with your kids. I just recently read an article that it's over 2 years old. It's from 2021, but it was written by a London Business School professor shortly after the pandemic sort of subsided, and she's really talking about the major life transitions, particularly through the lens of career shifts, but it applies to everything. And so she talks about really three phases. Like one, there's this separation. a lot of us experience, most of us experience some form of separation during the pandemic, like leaving the office, like leaving a job, moving.
Yeah.
The second phase is this sort of liminal phase where it's almost like purgatory, where we're in between, we're betwixt. And the third phase is reintegration. So having separated from old habits and norms and even communities or people, relationships, like how do we reintegrate into a day-to-day, a more normalized day-to-day life, having learned all these things. And I think one very difficult thing for many of us to do is to let go of those really comfortable habits and patterns that maybe got us to a certain point, but aren't what will
Right.
propel us to the next level. I
Right.
thought that was
And
really hard
that's,
hitting, and it's please go
yeah, I
ahead.
mean, I think too, like the idea that like good is relative, right? Like what's
Oh,
good here versus what's good in another country. Like I'm from Canada. I moved here in high school. So even there's even differences between here and there. And most people think that like Canada is just like the country that lives in the attic of America, but really like the values are different on different the importance is different in different countries.
oh
And
yeah.
so like here, there's what is good is a lot of it is influenced by what you're saying, like this super consumer type of life that we live. I was just having this conversation with my daughter, my 10-year-old, and saying like, she's like sees stuff on TV or whatever. Like they don't really watch a whole lot of like regular TV because the commercials, I feel like the commercials you used to see at like 8 o'clock at night, you now see at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And I was like, whoa, that's a little heavy. Like let's not.
We're diving
Um,
right in.
yeah, but I was like, I was explaining to her, I said, so much of what is marketed towards women is this is something that's wrong with you. Don't you feel bad about yourself? Buy our
Oh.
product or our solution so that you can be good. You can be like doing it right. You can be all of the things that you're supposed to be. And I'm like, at the end of the day, I want you to grow up and be a good human being,
Hmm.
not a good girl, not a good woman, not a good wife, not a
Yes.
good whatever. Like if if my goal in starting my own company is to have communication and collaboration and equity in my own home space, why would I not want that for my children? Like that's the
Mm.
point, right? It's like you go through this evolution and you go through this like figuring yourself out when you start having a family, when you get out of your nuclear family, when you start to carry on with your life. But I just feel like totally what you're saying, like it hits a gas pedal when you have a child, because all of a sudden you're like, oh, like I'm a link in the chain. Like I'm not the end anymore that everyone's looking out for. Like I am a link in the chain, and now this gets passed down to the next. So what do I want to be passed down for that? And it's this idea of like being good, being sweet, being
Mm.
nice, being all of that. And it's all this like control and things like, I mean, I could go off for hours talking about this. It's
Me
like
too.
drag soapbox out and center stage. But I think too, like where we are where we have the capacity to make huge progress, and where I wanted to have people come on from all different histories, is that people that I've spoken to already on the podcast, people that I have coming up on the podcast, we all have this similar, like, it's like I thought I knew what I was getting into. I had a child, and it's like when you go to a movie set, like you see the scene and you're like, wow, this is an old Western. And then you go behind and you're like, this is a board with a stick holding it up. Like, oh, wait a minute. This is all different than what I thought. What is really my process here? And what is my experience going to be? And what do I want this to be like? And I think that our generation of mothers is primed, ready, and well on their way to creating differences for the next generation. And it makes me so hopeful. And I want as many of these conversations to come to light as possible, because it doesn't matter what your experience is. It doesn't matter like what your career was or what your, how many kids you have or all of that. I feel like there's this general through line of like, these are the realizations that I had. This is not what I want. And And in all of it, it's me being on the table as well. And that goes
Absolutely.
across cultures and in a lot of places. Like, I can't speak to them all, but I just think that, like, this idea of putting ourselves on the map is where we're going to go, so that, like, someday my sons, if they are in heterosexual relationships and they have children, and if my daughters, if they decide to have children, that they do not lose sight of themselves. They do not feel like, okay, like, end scene, now I just service everything else around me. Um, or for my sons to say, okay, now this person just does all of the things and I don't. We're gonna create the opportunity for equity to be the norm. Fingers
Yeah.
crossed.
Fingers
Every
crossed.
day.
I think it's for both, yeah, for both gender types to witness is so critical because I have one of each. And
Yeah.
it's almost, I think it's a little more complicated with my daughter, but I want my son to witness just as much as I want her to witness my independence. And why I think when have having children is a shock to the system, and as we
Hmm.
talked about, and for me, like there kind of three that well, I guess yeah, so yeah, there kind of three that really came into play. And like one is circumstantial. Your logistics change. You have an additional family member who needs you. Everything's upside down, and no matter how much time you have to prepare, nothing will ever prepare you for it, right? And
Yeah.
what it looks like for different families or for different parent figures is it's different across the board. The second shock was really so, and I talk openly about this, but I never had this just innate biological desire to have children, which is funny because now that I have two and we're done with two, like I feel it. I'm like, oh, babies, like
Hmm.
we're done. But I never had that. And I
Yeah.
honestly, and also again, speak openly about this, I wasn't sure I could get pregnant. I was engaged. I didn't really, I had never been pregnant. So I was like, well, maybe it'll be hard for me. Or maybe I can't. So when I got
Right.
pregnant with my ex fiance, because we're not together anymore, I was surprised, and I also had just finished business school, so I just racked up this incredible student loan debt. I was working. I was kind of like in this prime place with my career,
Yep.
and then I got pregnant, and it was that was a real shock to my system. But funny enough, like when I got pregnant, even though I wasn't like really wanting it, like I knew I was gonna have my child. Like there wasn't even a question. Like I was
Hmm.
gonna do everything I wanted her. And so there was that shock. But then the third and probably the most potent one that continues to this day is that transformation really like challenged my place in the world as I'd known it. And
Yeah.
I had always been Christina at this company who does this job, Christina with this title, and I make this much money. And when I had kids, even before I left the workforce, it didn't matter to me anymore. And I realized, oh my God, I placed all this capital and all this value in roles that I played, things that I did that didn't really matter that much that don't really matter to me that much now. And so
Yeah.
I've thought and talked a lot about how if I didn't have children, I would have been very happy going on in the roles that I had, living the life. I was traveling all over the world and like just it was so fabulous and it was fun. And um but my definition of what fabulous and fun are have totally changed because I've stripped myself of so much.
Hmm.
And I stopped drinking like over a year ago because I wanted to get closer to my inner truth. And I realized that alcohol for me is a blocking agent or a clouding agent. It doesn't allow me to go through whatever I'm supposed to feel and experience. And so I joke, I'm like, yeah, I could have like stayed, taking Lexapro, drinking alcohol, and like, risen through certain big tech ranks, and it would
Yeah.
have been fine. But it wouldn't have been true to my essence and or true to my inner truth. And because I want my children to see a mother who is true to herself, I have to do the work. And I think you and Rachel May got into this, like just being true to who you're meant to be and doing the legwork. And so that's why I'm doing it. And it's not it's what's inspired my coaching practice, my coaching work with which I love doing. Um, but I need my kids to see that. I need them to
Yeah.
see my authentic self, and I need them to see me challenging myself and asking myself the hard questions. And I'm so grateful that we live in this day and age where parenting looks different. It's
Hmm.
different than how our mother's generation did it. And I'm so curious to see like what our kids one day will once be thinking about us, and how much
Yeah.
things will have evolved by the time they're raising their families. So it's just incredibly profound, just
Hmm.
kind of realizing like how how you want to live your life in a way that demonstrates the values that you want to sort of instill in your children. And for
Yeah.
me,
I feel
that's
like we had,
authenticity.
exactly. I think that we had like the generation before us, it was the two generations before us, it was there was no change, right? That was just like the same ball got rolled down the
Yeah.
hill and the next person picked it up and rolled it on. Then there's the generation before us, which was the emergence of the like, you can do it all, be it all, do all the things, which which was a total everything got jumbled up. And then I think our generation went on momentum wise of like, okay, we have to do all the things and be all the things, or we have to be all the things, but you don't find out until after that in order to be all the things you have to do all the things because there's no there's no infrastructure, there's no nothing. It's like, well, this is your choice, right? Quote unquote. I hate that line.
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
it's your choice to want to do that. It's your choice to want to have a career. It's your choice. And then I think what's happening with our generation is like it's too big of a thing to try. Like, why? I guess we're the why generation. Like, why do I want to do that? Why do I want to do, why do I want to try and be at every PTA meeting, at every this, at every this, at every this? Like, why? Because I'm supposed to. And then again, like, who tells me I'm supposed to do that? Like,
Yes.
there's all these questions. So now we get to say, I have no desire to do that. Like, I wrote a blog a long time ago about how I'm the napkin and silverware sign up parent. Like, out and out proud. Like, it is a legitimate race for me. Like, when I'm like, I know that something's coming up at school and I know that there's a sign up going, I'm like, napkins and silverware, that's
You're
me. Like,
stocked. I love
I
it.
have no desire to like, roll up with the main course. None whatsoever. Like, run in the other direction kind of situation.
Applause.
Exactly, because it's like, I don't want to do that. Like, I
Yeah.
don't. I love to cook, I love to bake, all of that stuff, but I want to do that for my family in my
Ugh.
house. I don't want to
Yes.
do it so that everyone else is like, oh my god, that's so amazing. I'm like, no, the pilaf stays with me. You can have the fork.
Yes. Absolutely.
And that's the like,
Absolutely.
you're not pouring all of yourself out all of the time to everyone. And
Yeah.
so maybe our kids, hopefully our kids will say, I know that this is where it started and this is what I watched my mom do and this is how I watched my mom do it differently. And so it won't feel like, is it okay for me to say no to this? Do I have to get to a point where I am so overwhelmed, I am so burnt, I am so empty feeling before I say no? Like, at the beginning, you're protecting your
Yeah.
peace before you have to give any of it up.
Yeah. Your bucket. Yeah.
Yeah, I hope
Exactly.
so.
It's so true. I with respect to school stuff, I thought about because I was like a room parent and not a good one, and then I was a room parent coordinator, sucked at that too. And I'm like, well, you know what? My kids attend a school that goes preschool through eighth.
Yep.
It's a small, very sweet school, and I wanted to support them, but yeah, I think I did a pretty shitty job, but whatever. I did it,
You
and then
check
I
the
was like,
box.
well, I checked the box, and then I thought about like what's my when do I say yes and when do I say no? And for me, it's when it's going to lead to meaningful engagement with my children in the sense that they know, like, hey, mom was around for this.
Yeah.
So they asked me to be room parent again. I said no. I've been there, done that. But it's that for me, and I'll pick and choose. I'm not going to do everything that's going to
Mhm.
like make my kids feel like, oh, mom was around. But I don't need to do behind the scenes stuff. I'm not interested. If I'm going to do it, it's either because it's going to lead to meaningful impact on my on my kids' experience in school, or because I'll have bonded with them or spent time with them. Like that's
Yeah.
it. But like backing up a little bit, it's these talking about expectations and like how we are raising our daughters. It's funny because as I've done a ton of self-reflection, I grew up in kind of an interesting kind of juxtaposed home where my parents are Russian immigrants from South America, and so what they came here very happy to have arrived in the U.S. They came to San Francisco in the '60s, so we had this like weird like you must assimilate, but at
Hmm.
home, like I only spoke Russian until I started school. There was this notion. I mean, education was always very stressed, very important,
Yeah.
um, because my family on both sides had lost everything fleeing communism and like only retained what degrees and knowledge they had, right? And so that was ingrained in me, and that remains a big value for me. But I found myself like when I think about my younger years, I was a very creative, very industrious child, and then I quickly snapped to this good girl path. I was a good
Hmm.
girl. I followed the rules, and I don't want my daughter to be a good girl. I don't. And I see this wild like streak and fire in her, not obnoxiously so, but I'm like, I'm always wondering, how do I preserve in her the rawness that she currently has, the challenging, the questioning, and um the lack of inhibition when she sings and dances. Like
Yeah.
I think it was a Dr. Becky Kennedy podcast, or maybe it was Glennon Doyle. I heard like a couple years ago, like everybody wants the obedient children.
Hmm.
Who wants to have the 30-year-old who blindly follows directions, right?
For sure.
I was the 30-year-old who blindly followed directions, and it didn't serve me. Like I don't
Right.
regret paths my path and the choices that I made. I believe that was all divine timing and a divine path. But I also sometimes wonder, like, did I just waste a lot of time doing stuff because I thought I had to, or doing it the way that I felt I needed to? And
Hmm.
how do I don't want to say give permission, but how do I put my children in an environment, in a setting where they're comfortable listening inward and challenging the rules, whatever they might
Yeah.
be?
Yeah.
It's
That's what I
hard.
say.
It's really hard.
I say to my kids, like, you have like an inside voice, right?
Oh,
And so your
yes.
inside voice, like when you're in some sort of interaction or encounter, you have an inside voice. And your inside voice, you can either listen to it, you can follow it, you can
Mm.
let it fly, or when you go to bed at night and you can't fall asleep, that's your inside voice going, you should have, you should have, you should have, you should have, you should have. So do you want to feel bad? Like, do you, and it's not even feel bad is not the thing. It's like, do you want to feel that discomfort because you are stifling that? Or do you want to feel the discomfort because you have shared what you need to share? You have stood up for yourself. You have advocated for yourself. You have whatever. And somebody else is having a reaction to that. Like it's a choice, right? Do you choose you or do you choose everybody else? And if you choose everybody else, you're never going to sleep because when you put your head down at night, that's still there. That feeling is still there. So you can't, that's not what's meant to be held on to. Because I agree. I played I played that very good, obedient, follow the rules, do the right things, get all the grades, do all the things for a very long time. And all it did was make me mad.
Oh,
And it's like, well, why? Like why am I the one who feels like garbage on the inside while everyone else is just carrying on with their life? And that's the thing. And for me, having children was like, I don't ever, same thing. I don't ever want any of my children to feel like they have to be not their authentic self, not the like full of fire and full of like thoughts, opinions, all of that stuff. For what? Like to like fill a role. Like you're not playing a part. This is your actual life.
yeah.
Oh, I
It mathematically doesn't line up. If you're
yeah.
holding yourself and conducting yourself and doing the things that in a way that are going to get you to someone else's standard or expectation, you're never going to feel right, because
Right.
it's not going to align with what's inside. And again, it comes back to these all these stimuli and all these influences that we're regularly exposed to, that are telling us what those things are, what
Mm-hmm.
good looks like, what success looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very challenging, and that's where this process of reparenting, I underestimate. I didn't even underestimate. I didn't even think about the extent of reparenting I would be doing
Yeah.
with myself in
Mm-hmm.
raising my children. And yes, being a parent changes you. It changes you in a lot of ways. It changes your life. For me, they're the catalyst. And a catalyst it could be a major life change. It could be surviving a horrific disease. It could be whatever. It could be a very different. It could be a different things. But for me, it was these children who came along, and they're they're the catalyst for me to do this inner work to become the person I'm supposed to be. But it's very much intertwined, because I'm then a better, more impact, I would hope, more impactful, meaningful mother and thought leader for them. Right. So it's
Yeah.
very intertwined, but it's they're the catalyst for me just to like look inward and question my values, my priorities, my motivations. And it's such a beautiful thing.
Mm-hmm. I think you've done a really great. I think that like all of the examples that you've given are incredible about like taking care of yourself and about, the role that you want to play, and that the primary role is yourself, and it's just how you interact with the world. That you stay true to you, and that you take care of you, because really at the end of the day, no one's going to take care of you as an adult. That's just not how it works. People just sort of like run right over top and carry on.
Yeah.
So setting those examples for yourself, and having that clarity of like, this is what's working, and this is what's not working, and this is how I want to show up for myself and my family. I think that's incredible.
Thank you for saying that. And it's critical, because if you don't take care of you, who's going to take care of your kids?
Right.
It's
No
that
one's showing
simple.
up.
Like, again,
That village,
I could
right?
have,
That village that's coming
where's
along.
the, oh yeah, where's this help? Where's all this help I'm supposed to ask for? And it's funny, because I mean, I have a great relationship with my parents. I love them so much. They live close by. And but the generational shifts are so obvious. And I was going through something, and she said, you need to take care of the kids and you in that order. I'm like, Mom, I no, I flip it. You got to flip it, because if I am not taking care of myself, I'm not my best self for them. And I don't want them to see. I mean, I don't shield them from much. It's not that they see anything. I mean, it's like my husband and I, we have very civil, when we fight or argue, it's civil, but
Yeah.
I don't try to hide much from them, because I want them to see reality. I don't want them to hear behind closed doors something that might be going on, or knowing that I'm in turmoil, but I'm putting on a happy face. They see through that. Kids are so smart. Kids are so
Hmm.
tuned in, way more tuned in than society gives them credit for. Or maybe now that's changing. But I told my mom, like, no, if I'm not good, I can't be good for them. And that doesn't serve them. It
Yeah.
doesn't. And so it seems it's self-serving, but not, because it's your gas mask. You have to put yours on first, right? It's
Mhm.
really
I think
simple.
Yeah, like, and I think too that people along the lines of underestimating kids is that I think that what people forget is that, you're a kid, it's like dark at night, you're in your room and you hear like a crash.
Mm.
Is your first thought, yay, oh my gosh, something amazing happened? Or like, oh my God, the world is ending. Some like a tree fell in my house, or somebody, whatever. Like, if you don't give the context, and if you don't fill in the blanks, they are I would bet a lot of money kids are not ever going to fill it in with like happy bunnies. Do you know what I mean?
Oh,
Like, it's that
thank you for
like
saying that.
it's the like everything is they want to be safe. Everybody wants to be safe, but like if there's upheaval and there's turmoil and things like that, it's like, well, how do I know that I'm okay? How do I know that I'm safe? How do I know this? And if you're doing like the behind closed doors. I mean, and like you said, like it's not everything, but it's providing context. And however you provide that
Yes.
context, that doesn't mean it's like you and your husband are having a fight and you're like, all right, well, let's get the kids in here so they don't like have a wishy-washy idea of what's going on. It's like, all right, let's provide context. And that's what I think so many of the people that are out there now in the media that are doing good work to show this stuff, like Dr. Becky Kennedy is talking about, like, is not saying, oh, you're fine. It's saying that is a really hard feeling.
Oh,
Let's talk
yes.
about it. You know what I mean? It's like we're giving kids the credit that they have deserved for a very long time, so that alongside what we're doing, we're giving them credit so that hopefully we can move this, the next generation forward in a way that they don't have to spend so much time reparenting themselves, because they were parented in a way that does not need that undoing piece to happen, for sure.
Yes. That's such a
Yeah.
beautiful way of summarizing it. I could not agree more.
Yeah. Oh, these kids. They
I know,
just
right?
shake everything. I will say,
Yeah.
I do have 4 kids, and a lot of times that's like, oh my God, it's so many children. I will maintain from now until forever that 0 to 1 is the hardest. And it was the hardest because of this adjustment. Like, I
Yeah.
remember I was in the hospital, I had just had my daughter, and I got up to, like, I think I like got up to have a shower the day after or something like that. And I remember I walked into the bathroom and I was like, do I leave her out there? Like, I'm in the hospital. I was like, do I leave her out there or do I bring her in the bathroom? What do I do? I'm not really sure now. And it was like the switch had flipped of like, it's not just me. Like,
Yeah.
I'm on the hook for this one too. And like, how do I reorganize my life? And it's such a light switch moment. I did
Yeah.
end up having a shower with the door open with her half in, out. I don't know what I
Perfect.
was
It's
thinking, but
perfect.
like, I mean, I wasn't
And I
thinking,
see it.
let's
I see it. No, yeah, immediately postpartum. It's hilarious. And then with the second one, it's like, oh yeah, you don't need a crib. Just, bassinet by the bed. It's, my husband and I joke all the time around, like, first of all, our expectations, because so I met my husband when I was pregnant with my daughter from a previous relationship.
yeah,
And we had all these, and we're all one big happy family. But we had all these expectations. Oh, my children will only eat organic and there will be no screen time, and how quickly that changes when
yeah,
reality sets in. But the difference between 1 and 2 was this tremendous relief, like just knowing what matters and what
yeah,
doesn't. It's like we cut out so much BS with the second one because we're like, oh, that we barely use that. So yeah. So it just you get comfortable. You get comfortable.
yeah,
You get confident. But I agree. I mean, it's like that tethered nature that we assume as soon as they pop out or are removed from us, it is real. Is real.
yeah,
And it's and I've been telling people, I'm like, even when they're at school, it's not, unless I leave my place of work, which is my home primarily, because there's cleaning, there's the laundry, there's the shopping. It's like you're tethered. You're tethered for life,
yeah.
And it's a beautiful connection. But yeah, that's a huge transition. Changes
Hmm.
you forever.
Yeah. But I think it's a beautiful connection when you do what needs to get done to take care of yourself.
Yes.
And I think that's why
Yes.
this is so important, is like, you don't, you want to be a healthy version of yourself. We all want to be a healthy version of ourselves. We all want to be content and we all want to be happy. I don't think we all want to be like dancing through a field of like flowers. Like, we're not all aiming to be Von Trapps, but like, you don't want to feel like garbage, because it's that book that like everyone reads in kindergarten, right? It's like, don't be a bucket emptier, right? Fill your bucket.
Oh,
Don't
yes.
tip other people's buckets, all of this. And it's like, it's so simple, but it really does. I feel like that's what makes the difference. And if we fill our own bucket, whatever that looks like, if it is
Yeah.
making sure that like everything in your house feels comfortable, if it's that the way that the systems are set up, if it is not a single sock that needs to be washed, if it is 2 hours of exercise, if it is your corporate career, if it is whatever it is that on an individual level makes you feel like you're not like a pie that's got 7 slices out of 8, because you're that missing slice. If you
Yeah.
bring your slice to the pie, everybody is going to be better off for it. You're going to be better off. Your family's going to be better off. Your relationships are going to be better off. So how do you make your pie piece a part of the equation?
It's critical. It's
Yeah.
critical, and getting really tuned into what that looks like
Mm-hmm.
is everything. And
Yeah.
it's been a journey, but because I had my kids so close, and you had four within just a short time frame, but it's incredible. But once you figure out what that is, it's really empowering. Then you realize,
Mm-hmm.
and then I talk to my kids about it. Like they see me, they know that I work out. They see me do the things for myself, and I'll tell them like, "Mommy needs 15 minutes and then I'll be right with you," or they can hang out with me and watch me. I love when they watch me do yoga or Pilates, because I want them to see that I'm doing something healthy for myself, and I want to help instill in them like just the love that and the cherishing nature within which we should treat our bodies, because they're
Mm.
fighting on a regular, like every second our bodies are fighting to heal and to live and just to have us in this world. And so I want to kind of pass that on to them, but I definitely talk to them
Yeah.
about the things that I need, whether it's I had big feelings and I shouldn't have yelled, or mommy's really tired and I really need to get to bed and get to rest early today. I just that is important, because I want it. I mean, for me to convey myself as this like ready to go, like perfect mom, that's not realistic. I don't want that. I don't want them to expect that from me, because it's
Right.
not reality.
Right. Right. It's how you show your self-respect in a
Exactly.
way pushes that makes it possible for everything to go. So
Exactly.
I think I'm so thankful that you came on today. I am like I think that you have I've read and listened to your podcasts and talking about respect and talking about how you are sharing your parts with people around you, how you speak about how you take care of yourself with your daughter. I was listening to your podcast
Oh.
last night,
About
and like,
vanity, my vanity. Yes.
yeah, but it's important because it's
Yeah.
not like it's not going to come up in the media. So
Yeah.
I would love for you to share how people can find you and how people can connect with you and all of that stuff. I'm a little new in the podcast world, so to speak, and so I'm like, do the thing at the end where it's like it sounds like the thing that's supposed to sound like, and people are like,
Well,
what are
don't
you?
tell anyone else, because you're crushing it, Ashley.
Oh,
You're
thanks.
crushing it. No, truly, you are. And I'm relatively new as well. It's just it was time to bring certain conversations to the table. So I can be reached on Instagram at You're Totally Fine. Oh, I'm sorry. That's my website. So Instagram is Totally Fine Coach. And then my
Hmm.
website that kind of shares a bit about my background, links to my LinkedIn and my experience, is yourtotallyfine.com. And that's YOURE totallyfine.com. I'm currently doing only one-on-one work, but I have in the making a group coaching experience that is going to be all about decompression. It's going to be called Decompression early next
Very
year.
cool.
So it has been such a joy, Ashley. It's been so fun. And as soon as I listened to your podcast, I knew that we were going to have a very fruitful conversation. So
Yes.
it's been so fun. And thank you so much for the opportunity.
Yes. And I will, I'll put up all of your links in the show notes. So, people can reach out and hear all about your courses or your coaching and your group when it comes online. So that'll be awesome.
Thank you so much, Ashley.
Yeah. Thank
so
you.
great chatting with you.